last month I turned 31 years old. Now I'm not gonna do the whole, oh look how old I am gag, because screw you, I'm not. But getting older does make you think back to some of the many things you watched growing up. And yes, I realize I do that on this channel all the time already, and can you guys just play along? Please? While I was born in '89 and as a result mostly watched the cartoon through reruns and VHS tapes, I was as big into Ninja Turtles as any kid in the 90s, along with its many imitators. We've had some fun on this channel before, tearing into a few of these shows, and I don't plan on stopping that anytime soon, because I actually do find the Secret Mutant Hero Team genre pretty fun, even with shows like this among them. But my personal favorite of all the TMNT-style shows that aired back when I was a kid was Biker Mice from Mars. No, seriously, I lived and breathed the show growing up, even though I mostly watched it through a small handful of VHS tapes, of which I still have 2 that have survived the test of time. Can't say the same for the casing though. I had a bunch of toys, including that rad jail cell car, I had a Biker Mice drawing pad, hell, I even had the board game! I also didn't really have many friends in grade school and middle school, so Lord only knows how many times I made my poor dad play that with me. Sorry, Dad. My point is, I love this show and I have fond memories of it, but we all know that nostalgia can be misleading. Maybe Kid Me just remembers the great Danish dub and the buff dudes and cool motorbikes that fired lasers. Maybe it's yet another mindless knockoff that just happened to strike a chord with me. So I rewatched the whole thing. Yes, the whole thing. In order to find out. And let's just begin where we always do with these older cartoons, with the theme song.
Biker Mice from Mars. Biker Mice from Mars. Biker Mice from Mars.
Well, it certainly leaves an impression. Sure, it doesn't have catchy lyrics like many of its contemporaries, but it piques your interest right away with that weird voice and sci-fi noises. And then it just sucks you in the face by showing you everything you need to know. Once the guys burst through that tower, they immediately start beating dudes up left and right to the tones of a badass guitar riff, while constantly repeating the title of the show. It makes damn well sure you remember what you're watching, and it is glorious. Okay, so maybe I'm going to be a little bit biased in this video, but man, seeing that intro again after all these years has me fired up. Similarly, the first episode gets right to the good stuff, as we're introduced to our heroes, Throttle, Moto, and Vinny, cruising along in their spaceship and seeming to have a grand old time.
This is living. Nothing to do but rocking and rolling and racing through the cosmos.
You gotta love how Moto rips off the top of the can! Really gotta make it clear to the audience that this show is macho as hell. It's almost as ridiculously testosterone-packed as freaking Commando. Well, I did say almost. The party doesn't last very long though. The gang is soon shot down by an alien race called the Plutarchians, and they crash land on Earth. More specifically, they land in Chicago. Needing a mechanic to fix their advanced bikes, they seek out the human woman Charlie and rescue her from a hulking enforcer called Grease Pit, who is there to reclaim a debt to his boss, Lawrence Limburger. Once Charlie has had a moment to get over the fact that she just got rescued by 3 extremely roided up Mouseketeers, Throttle quickly fills her and the audience in on their backstory.
Now, the Plutarchians wanted our land, right? Seems they wasted all their own natural resources, so they go around strip mining the cosmos.
So they blew up your planet?
Nah, they bought up our planet, tore the place apart and dug up the land to ship back to Plutarch.
Right. Well, the mice population fought back, but most of us were wiped out.
And upon hearing their story, Charlie shares some bad news.
I think you ought to check something out. From the looks of things, I'd say they're here.
Yep, the Plutarchians are planning on stripping Earth of all its resources, starting with Chicago. And for the rest of the show, the Biker Mice battle the disguised Plutarchian Lawrence Limburger, trying to prevent him from causing irreversible environmental damage to the planet. There's your premise. Now, despite my excitement, this cartoon, as well as most other cartoons at the time, mostly existed to sell toys. But to sell toys, you need an interesting, cool-looking cast of characters. So, let's see what we got. Our main trio of mice consists of Throttle, voiced by Rob Paulsen by the way, who is the cool-headed leader of the bunch. Then there's Moto, the temperamental but ultimately soft-hearted giant, and Vinny. Vinny is completely batshit insane.
Whoa! The top 60 countdown!
Listen to me. 30 seconds. No more. After that, boom. The supercharger goes up like a bomb. And if it's still on the bike, so do you.
Impending catastrophe. That's why I love it! You boys are messing with Vinny Van Wham! The baddest mamma jamma this side of the asteroid belt!
He's my favorite. Everything about these three is striking right away. Even with near-identical bodies, they have unique color palettes, accessories, and weapons, and they don't even need to have one specific superpower or primary role within the group to stand out from each other. I'll get into a few other things that set them apart from other teams in this genre later, but for now, let's refer to the TMNT knockoff checklist. Alright, let me see here. We've got the anthropomorphic hero cast, so next we're gonna need... an April! Well, that role is taken by Charlie, who doubles as the Donatello by tinkering with the guy's gadgets. By the way, try and guess Charlie's last name. It's Davidson. Very clever. Charlie's smart, witty, and unlike April, is much more willing to take active part in the guy's adventures, even if she occasionally does play the damsel in distress role. Which, of course, means we need to have the obligatory Girls Can Be Cool 2 episode in The Masked Motorcyclist. Oh wow, the guys are being total sexist pricks to her for the whole episode, and they won't let her join in the action because she's a girl, and about that time a mysterious female biker starts showing up to help them out, and they all think she's super hot and badass. Who could this mysterious woman possibly be? I hated this episode as a kid. And no, it wasn't for the ew girls reason you might think. First of all, the episode assumed that Kid Me was too stupid to guess that that's Charlie under that suit. That's strike one. But as you can imagine, the guys do find out that it was her all along after she gets hurt on a mission. To the guys' credit, they do apologize for their behavior and tell her the main reason they keep her out of the action is because they're afraid of her getting hurt. To which Charlie replies,
You and the guys all run risks. The point is, I didn't get hurt because I'm a woman. I got hurt because I did something dangerous.
which is a great and well-made point. But then she says,
And I think I'll retire for a while.
oh good, so we're just gonna validate the guy's behavior after all, and Charlie's gonna sit right back and never join the action again because she fell and hurt her butt that one time. But hey, at least she got one episode, right? Yeah, real nice, guys. Let me just cross feminism off your to-do list for the day. I'm sure that'll keep the little bitches happy for a couple years. Now chop chop everybody, get back to work. We have Barbies to sell. Except, no, actually. See, as a kid, I only had a handful of VHS tapes and no channel the show aired on, so I actually only watched a few episodes past this point. Truth is, Charlie does join the action far more often after this episode, and the guys never give a shit about it again. Honestly, that's pretty well done for a 90s boys action cartoon. Hell, she outright upstages them on occasion.
Am I the absolute baddest mamma jamma? Charlie girl, tell me when you're gonna butt in like that.
You wouldn't shut up.
Jesus Christ, Charlie! Actually, while there's this whole dynamic of Vinny always hitting on Charlie and her always brushing him off, I can't help but notice that she always sits on his bike whenever she rides with the guys. It's a cool and pretty sweet little detail. I like it. Alright, that's enough hero talk. Let's take a look at the villains. The main villain is the Plutarchian Lawrence Limburger, who, disguised as a human businessman, is on a quest to tear the Earth apart to harvest its natural resources. And you know what? Aside from all the jokes I could make about yet another 90s cartoon with an environmental message, which, you know, is still quite relevant, I really think Limburger pulls off this villain archetype pretty damn well. I joked in my old Toxic Crusaders video that show's villain, Dr. Killamov, is very similar to Limburger. After all, they both pose as suit-wearing businessmen and wear masks to appear human, but are actually gross aliens out to destroy the planet for the selfish benefit of their own race. But the thing is that Killamov pollutes basically for the hell of it, like he's some kind of Captain Planet villain. Limburger, by comparison, is actually a scarily realistic take. Now don't get me wrong here, his plans and antics are as silly and over the top as any 90s cartoon villain, and you'll see him do shit like eat live worms just to remind the audience that he's evil. But he's driven by how his race has gotten so accustomed to wealth and excess that they don't care about what damage they do to themselves or others, as long as it means they don't have to give up a fraction of their own opulence for a single minute. He certainly sounds very similar to some real-life folks we could name. And the worst part is that the show makes it pretty clear he's not exactly very highly ranked in the Plutarchian hierarchy. He has a rival in the even more insane Plutarchian Napoleon Bree, who is voiced by freaking Luke Perry of all people, by the way, and he even has bosses to answer to, which really makes you realize how deeply ingrained their destructive nature is. But then again, this is also the race that has this as their official greeting.
Chick to chick and stink to stink as through talk rolls the galaxy shrinks.
So, you know, maybe take all the shit I just said with a grain of salt. There's even an episode where Limburger's boss insists on doing this naked. I'm starting to think this was never their actual greeting, and it's just this guy's very specific fetish. Look, I know it's gross, but don't shame him, okay? His wife never touches him anymore. He really needs this. Of course, the main villain needs henchmen. First, we have Grease Pit, who is basically what would happen if Bebop and Rocksteady hit their head too many times on the same rock. And then there's Dr. Carbuncle, the obligatory mad scientist, whose voice is so high-pitched yet also raspy that I can't understand the fucking thing he's saying half the time.
Be careful, you dim-witted disaster. That's a delicate instrument. At once, your odoriferous excellence. Behold, my newest invention, capable of bringing inanimate objects to life. Mobility juice.
Jesus, everything about this guy is just weird and wrong. He looks and sounds like Dexter grew up, did a ton of crystal meth, and then had wild monkey sex with Isma. He's hilariously disgusting. I love him. Especially whenever he addresses Limburger with a new cheesy title.
You called your cheddary cheesiness? Oh, right away, your aromatic Gouda gassiness. Your delicious dairiness has done it again. Oh, flatulently fragrant one.
Get it? Because Limburger is his name, but Limburger is also a cheese, and all the Plutarchians are named after cheeses, and also they smell bad, so he always calls him something new that has to do with cheeses. And look, it's really clever, okay? Oh, and there's also Fred the Mutant. He exists to get hurt in funny ways, and he gets super horny when it happens. Moving on. Wait, actually, speaking of horny, did I mention that this show is super horny all the time? I mean, seriously, look at this show. It's about giant muscular shirtless dudes riding around on motorbikes beating up other muscular shirtless dudes. There's Limburger always rubbing asses with his boss, Vinny's constant come-ons to Charlie, this swimming scene. It doesn't take many episodes to make it clear that this show knows exactly what it's doing.
It's a disguise.
Disguise schmice. I like it. Turn around, let me see the back.
I guess none of us should judge a book by its cover.
Even if it is leather-bound. Grease Pit in a suit? And Limburger in a maid's uniform? Oh, those dirty devils. Watch the merchandise, sweetheart.
Okay. Now what? And just look what happens when Moto wears the tuxedo.
Name, please. Sir? Mouse. Moto Mouse.
I know it's a costume party and they're probably doing the gag where they think it's a mask and they're reacting to his body, but it's so much funnier to imagine Chicago's elite just being filled to the brim with raging furries. Oh, yiff me, Daddy Moto, yiff me! Just don't try to put Charlie in a Leia-style slave bikini. She doesn't like it. But hey, horny or not, at least the show is all-inclusive.
I told him that someday I, Gwendolyn, will inherit my Uncle Lawrence Limburger's entire estate, including his territory of Chicago. So now, of course, he wishes to make me his betrothed.
Aw, that's great, boss. I'm so happy for yous. Could I come to the wedding, boss? Maybe be best maid of honor? Macho man.
Anyway, we still gotta cover some more characters. What, you thought we were done? Please, that's only like 8 characters to shill. We need to sell more toys. More toys! Ah, the eternal struggle of the toy commercial cartoon. How to create even more wild characters to make toys of. Well, aside from also giving us the occasional human criminal, the show actually has a pretty great take on that. The Turtles fixed this problem with the mutagen, which could basically create whatever character the show wanted at any time. But this show uses the fact that Limburger is an alien businessman and simply gives him a teleporter that allows him to hire mercenaries from all over the galaxy whenever he needs a bit of extra muscles. Mercenaries whose contact information Carbuncle keeps in an actual Rolodex, by the way. That's hilarious. The upside to this is that the show can pull a new cool villain out of its ass whenever it wants without worrying about how to introduce them. This results in the viewers getting to enjoy seeing fun and badass villains like Electromag, Tunnel Rat, and Evil Eye Weevil. The downside is that while some of these characters do make repeat appearances, they don't really get much in the way of unique personality or backstory. And for every genuinely cool character that shows up, we get shit like Catscan or Weathermeister.
Today's forecast shows heavy rainstorms over Limburger Central, so you'd better pack your umbrellas.
What? Don't be stupid, be a smarty. Come on, join the Nazi party.
And finally, to finish off our little checklist here, we need a trademark favorite food and a catchphrase. This time, their snack of choice is hot dogs. You know, like the Street Sharks. Is Chicago, like, especially famous for its hot dogs or something? I seriously don't know. I'm not American. Is it?
Pardon me. Have you any Grey Poupon?
And finally, it's catchphrase time. Oh boy. This is usually the most embarrassing part of these shows, so... Alright, what is it? What's it gonna be? Is it gonna be like, mice to see you? Or maybe mouse standing? Maybe something vaguely biker related like, let's hit the rodent? Go ahead, biker mice, hit me. I can take it.
It's time to rock and ride!
Huh. That's not too bad, actually. It's not a painful pun, they don't say it 5 times an episode, and it's something I can sort of imagine a biker might have said once. You know what? Good on ya, biker mice. You get a pass on this one. Alright, so we've gone over a ton of ways that this show is similar to many of the other TMNT knockoffs that danced across TV screens in the 90s, but what makes it different, I hear you ask? How does it set itself apart? Well, upon a rewatch, I can think of a couple ways. For one, it's just generally well animated and paced by 90s cartoon standards. It's not constantly tripping over its own feet trying to deliver as many action segments as possible without having the budget to pull them off like the Street Sharks did. And whenever the mice set out to kick ass, they really kick ass! These guys, especially Vinny, are thrill seekers. They love fighting bad guys, and they have complete, unshakable confidence in their ability to take a motherfucker down. So whenever danger shows itself, they just waltz straight in and start taking names. I mean, look what happens when they get a threatening letter from an old villain who kidnapped Charlie.
He says he wants us to meet him tomorrow on foot and unarmed. And we'll never see her again.
Tomorrow? Sorry, can't wait.
On foot? Nope, not our style.
And unarmed? What's this guy, a comedian?
Well, zip out of 3 ain't bad.
Let's ride!
And that is why these guys are extra awesome. Another thing that really works in this show's favor is its great sense of camaraderie, which is something I feel like a lot of the other shows never quite managed to get right. Once again, let's compare to the Turtles. Here we're dealing with 4 brothers who grew up together under a father figure that taught them all they know. They're a family, we know they're a family, and they behave as if they know each other. Many other shows like this kind of just slap a team together, assign roles, and let the plot happen around them, while occasionally remembering to call each other brothers or band members or whatever. The biker mice, however, are immediately introduced hanging out, drinking, and having fun, even after a fairly traumatic event. And whenever we don't see them in action, they're usually doing silly shit like playing checkers or watching dumb movies or roughhousing. I'm not saying this never happens in the other shows, but here it really makes them feel like 3 people who enjoy each other's company, rather than just a bunch of action figures competing about who can come up with the cheesiest one-liners. And surprisingly, the show can actually be outright sensitive in places. So, you see those things they're wearing? Like Moto's arm, Vinny's mask, Throttle shades? Those aren't just cool accessories. Those are prosthetics. These guys are war veterans. They lost body parts fighting together back on Mars. Let's take a moment to focus on Moto, who is normally the big bruiser with a temper style of character. He's occasionally shown being sensitive about his arm being ugly. He gets emotional if kids are in danger since he has a nephew back on Mars, and he generally tends to wear his emotions on his sleeve all the time. In any other 90s cartoon like this, Moto would get teased for not being a tough guy, and then everyone else would have to learn a valuable lesson about how that's okay or some crap like that. But here?
Dang. It's just like that old movie.
Hey, easy, big fella.
But he had this pretty new arm, all smooth and shiny, not old and creaky like this one.
Poor guy. This just isn't like him.
Hey, where'd you get this one anyway?
You tell her.
Okay, bro.
You mean Carbuncle made Moto's arm?
Shh, careful, sweetheart. He's kind of touchy about that fact.
No bullying, no cracks about being tough enough. He's always met with understanding and compassion. He even gets it from Vinny, who's usually a wisecracking hill racer. Let me just remind you that we're watching a show about a bunch of shirtless alien cyborgs who ride around on motorcycles that shoot lasers, set to a soundtrack consisting almost entirely of electric guitars. Everything about this show advertises that it is rated M for manly and has no time for sissy things like feelings or thoughts. But not once does it ever give its main cast shit for having personal doubts or soft spots. And yet it still manages to also be more metal than stuff like Extreme Dinosaurs or Street Sharks could ever hope to be once the action scenes kick in. I know these softer moments don't seem like much nowadays, with character and story-driven shows having become much more common, and it really only shows up here and there, but for the 90s, this is a very welcome change of pace. Another unique aspect of the show is its story ambition. Yeah, the show actually has a storyline going for it. Now let me be clear, the show is mostly episodic and monster of the week, like most cartoons at the time. It's not at all like the longer plotlines we see in cartoons nowadays. But there are a few multi-parters that go into details about the mice's lives back on Mars. These episodes cover topics like the other surviving Martian struggles to revive the planet, and how the main trio's various relationships struggle due to being so far away from home, and even how their various combat injuries affect them personally. And outside of the multi-parters, the other Martians occasionally visit Earth, continuing their efforts to restore their home to its former glory. My point is, the main characters' backstories aren't just an excuse to land them on Earth and provide a vague end goal to keep the show going endlessly like some other series were doing at the time. It gets addressed directly and expanded upon. Again, it's not much by today's standard, but it was somewhat unusual at the time, and I really appreciate seeing it now. I could go on for hours and hours about this show, I really could, but this video is already running long, so I'm gonna wrap things up. Biker Mice lasted for a full syndicated 65 episodes, and actually enjoyed quite a bit of success compared to other shows like it. It got a huge amount of toys, a supposedly very solid SNES racing game I've never played, as well as a few comic books. And while the original series never got a true finale, it actually did get a sequel series in 2006. No, not a reboot, but a genuine sequel series that lasted 2 seasons. I didn't really watch that one because I didn't like the new character designs at the time, but who knows, maybe I'll check it out sometime. Bottom line for this video though, revisiting Biker Mice did not disappoint. I still think this show holds up, and I wouldn't hesitate to call it a great 90s cartoon. Now, I'm not stupid, and I'm not blind to my own bias. This was one of my favorite shows growing up, and I'm not gonna pretend that some of that doesn't affect my rating of this show now as an adult at least a little. It definitely still has many of the cheesy trappings that many other 90s cartoons had, such as corny jokes, or the occasional grating voice, or some odd pacing here and there. And like the rest of its kind, it definitely would never have existed without the Ninja Turtles paving the way. But I still think that if you take a moment to look at this show yourself, you'll see that it's one of the more fondly remembered ones for a reason. The action is awesome, it's full of memorable characters, the animation and the voices are usually great, and it's just a really well-rounded show. Despite how heavily it might be inspired by another. That's not necessarily a bad thing. See you next time, folks, and remember to rock and ride. Hey folks, sorry this video took a while to get here, but I hope you liked it. What were your favorite TMNT-style shows growing up? Let me know in the comments, and remember to click the like button while you're at it. Special thanks go to Silver Moon Ravenwolf, Warren Miller, and Eli Cat, as well as my other patrons. You guys have no idea how much you rule. And if you want to support me as well, you can find links to my Patreon, Ko-fi, and TeePublic pages in my descriptions, along with links to my various social media sites. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel to get more nerdy videos in the future. See you there, everybody. Bye bye.